right, I think we can go ahead and get started and we'll let people come in. We've got a couple of slides that are kind of housekeeping and just a short introduction. So welcome everybody to the benefits of newsletter campaigns. Thank you so much for attending today. Jake and I will be presenting on our own experiences utilizing two major newsletter platforms. A lot of that will come from MailChimp and Constant Contact. We'll be talking about the highlights, the drawbacks to newsletters. We'll talk about pricing, which can kind of be a beast of its own. And we'll show you some samples of what our newsletters look like. Jake and I, we're by no means professionals at building newsletters, but we've spent many years perfecting our newsletters. And I can honestly say I'm still working on it. I'm still learning something new every semester, really, truly. So if you have any tips on any other platforms that you might use for newsletters, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I think oftentimes you're just going to have to test out which newsletters are best for you, really. So yeah, feel free to utilize the chat throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, please use the chat. All right, so let's start with a quick introduction of ourselves. My name is Stephen Gonzalez. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I work for the Center for Global and Intercultural Study, aka CGIS, at the University of Michigan. And my role as communication specialist is 100% marketing focused. So I do all of the outreach and recruitment. I do all of the print and digital design work. I coordinate events. I run the social media, all of our social media platforms, and I do all of the website management. And of course, there's so much that squeezes into those little pockets of marketing. So yeah, that is the gist of my position. And I'm going to let Jake introduce himself and his position.
Hey everybody, my name is Jake Koelzer and my pronouns are he, him, his. I am a program advisor at the University of Michigan's International Center on the Global Engagement and Education Abroad team. So yeah, I do have many different roles on campus. One is social and cultural programming for our international students and scholars. I also process immigration documents for our international students. And then on the other side of international education, I do education abroad advising. And then finally, about 10% of my role is marketing / communications, and I manage our office's newsletters and social media accounts.
All right, so just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you would just make sure that you've muted your microphone, rename your display so that if you are asking questions, we know who to address. And if you could potentially just wait until the end of the presentation for questions. We do have a lot to talk about today, so we want to make sure we get through it. But if something is unclear throughout this presentation, please please feel free to utilize the chat. And then what if we're Zoom bombed? Thankfully, we have been okay so far. But just in case of the event of a Zoom bomb, we will just notify us if you feel like we haven't noticed at all, and then exit immediately, and you will be contacted shortly after that with a new Zoom link with a passcode. So just make sure to look out for that email if that should happen.
Okay, so we're just going to jump right into things. So I'll just briefly go over the overview for the presentation. First, we're going to talk about why, out of all the communication mediums out there, that we should use newsletters. Then we'll go over the pros and cons of newsletters. After that, as Stephen mentioned, we'll be comparing two newsletter platforms, MailChimp and Constant Contact. After that, we'll discuss how to put a newsletter together, which will include going over some examples of our own newsletters that we've sent out earlier this year. And then we'll highlight some things to consider when creating a newsletter. And finally, we'll make sure to leave some time for questions and also hopefully leave some time for maybe some of our more experienced attendees to give the opportunity to give any newsletter related advice, because I do want to reiterate that we are not newsletter experts despite presenting.
All right, so we're just going to start with a poll really quickly. We're going to launch that right now. But the question is, what is your experience creating newsletters? And while you guys are filling that out, I just kind of want to explain how newsletters are utilized, or at least how we're utilizing them within the university system. And that's really just to share the relevant, valuable content that students, staff, faculty, and or other stakeholders like parents need to know in regards to our programming. It's important to highlight that audiences differ. I think between Jake and I, we have two very distinctive audiences. For me, it is just students, staff, faculty, and maybe some parents, but for Jake, it's more focused on international students. And the really cool thing about having a newsletter or utilizing a newsletter platform is that you can manage those separate audiences. But we'll get into that a little bit later. All right, so it looks like, let's see, 24% of you, 12 of you are, okay, there we go. I was like, where'd it go? Are regularly creating newsletters. It seems that most of you have created a newsletter, but consider yourself inexperienced. Okay, that's still me, and it's been 4 years. And then 14 of you, I have no experience creating newsletters. That's okay. It is a process, so we'll try and get there together.
All right, so why should you, or why would university offices want to use newsletters? First of all, newsletters allow for you to organize communications to multiple audiences on one single platform. This is nice because you can organize your contacts in specific groups. For example, my office has separate lists for international students, actually a separate list for F1 international students and J1 international students, a separate list for international scholars, new incoming students, so we can send our orientation related emails to them. And then we even have, other random lists like ones for like international student birthdays. So like monthly birthday emails that we send out. So you can do a lot with these lists. Second, newsletters have much more extensive outreach than email. The University of Michigan uses Gmail, and you're limited to 100 email addresses per email to contact. And yeah, depending on depending on how much you pay or what newsletter platform you're using, you have the opportunity to reach out to much more. Newsletters are also more visually appealing than email. I guess that's an opinion, but it's I think it's pretty objectively true that they look better than emails. And maybe your students will be much more likely to read your communication in this type of aesthetically pleasing format. And then you can also add a subscribe to our newsletter link on your website or maybe your social media accounts. And on the flip side, you can also promote your social media accounts on your newsletters. So it just allows for a lot more outreach on many different mediums. One of the most important and useful benefits of a newsletter is that multiple colleagues can create, review, and edit newsletters. So you have, many people in your office or on your team can have access to the same account. And if you're in a position where the marketing role is shared amongst colleagues like mine, the responsibility wouldn't have to fall on only one person to create, edit, and send out all of your communications. So it's really collaborative in that sense, which is nice. Another thing is that if you're an analytical person, newsletters can be great because you can track how many people have opened your newsletter, how many clicks each link has gotten, and MailChimp can even tell you where in the world it's been opened. So it's just really great for, tracking analytics and things like that. And I just want to make a note that this is typically for paid accounts only. I don't know if any of the free newsletter accounts will allow for that, but we'll get it more into pricing in the next few slides. And then the last thing I want to mention is that newsletter platforms offer like a library of pre-made templates that you can either customize or keep as is, or they give you the option to just create your own newsletter template or newsletter campaign from scratch. So there's a lot of flexibility and customizability in making a newsletter, which is really, really nice. And then once you have a template or templates made, you can just easily make a copy or replicate them to save a lot of time in the future. So yeah, a lot of pros for using newsletters.
Well, we couldn't have pros without some cons, but there really are more pros for sure to utilizing a newsletter than there are cons. But obviously, the first drawback is the cost. Unfortunately, all of the really awesome features that these platforms provide do have a fee, but that doesn't entirely mean that you can't have a newsletter using a free version of one of the accounts that, well, actually of MailChimp. We'll be talking about MailChimp a little bit later in terms of free version. Jake actually utilizes the free version of MailChimp, so he'll have a little bit more insight on that. But I'm sure there are other platforms out there that you can start off with. MailChimp would actually be a good way to test it out first, utilizing that free version. I know for my office, when the pandemic hit and suddenly I found my entire budget freezing, I could no longer justify the cost for those first few months into the pandemic. So I was able to actually downgrade to the free version. And unfortunately, MailChimp only allows you to do that one time. But in this case, it really was helpful for me in terms of making sure that I wasn't like tapping out on my budget, on all my resources because of this emergency that came out of nowhere. So that's a really cool option with MailChimp. And then second time, really the whole theme of this event that we're doing today is figuring out how much time, how much resources you have dedicating to this. This will obviously change as you continue to get more familiar in the platforms, but I will say that some platforms that I've utilized are not very user-friendly, so it does take some time. So can you allot yourself the right amount of time to practice and to really hone in on just the basics and the essentials of creating a newsletter? Once you do that, you can get a lot done. Quickly.
I just want to chime in real quick on the next bullet point and say that newsletters might not be the best solution for communicating important or time-sensitive information. I'll just use an example with international students. So this might be more of an extreme example, but let's say a student is not enrolled in enough credits to maintain their F1 visa status. Probably not the best idea to include an announcement to all students who do not have full-time enrollment for the semester in the middle of a newsletter with like random events and announcements and things like that. In those cases, we found it's best to send those specific students an email with like urgent or action required in the subject line. Because the sad truth is that international students, or maybe students in general, don't always read our newsletters. I have the analytics to back it up. So we don't want something like super important or time sensitive hiding in our newsletter.
Yeah, I think that's like a perfect example of where the rest of your team can share the load, is how you communicate to your students. I think what's really helpful for us is that I'm not always the one leading the communications. Most of the time it is our advisors reaching out to students for time sensitive and urgent emails like that. It's very helpful to not have to always stress about communication. And then lastly, platform integration. It doesn't really exist in the two platforms we're going to be discussing today, in the sense of a lot of us operate within a university or an organization where we have our own internal data bank that kind of hosts all of the emails that exist within the university system. And unfortunately, in a platform like MailChimp, you can't just go into, for example, ours is called M Community. and we're able to create as many contact lists as I think we can. I wouldn't be able to go into MailChimp and like automatically integrate my M community into MailChimp. But what I can do is if I already have an existing contact list, I can download that contact list and then upload within like a bulk file onto my MailChimp. So then that way it's easier to navigate, but I wish it could be easier where they were able to integrate on a lot of platforms. I just wanted to touch briefly on these 4 integration options that MailChimp has. So Twitter and Facebook, in terms of integration, you can, I guess, give access to your Twitter and your Facebook account. And that way, when you're posting a MailChimp campaign, that will automatically post to those platforms. And then MailChimp, because they have advertisement options, it also works together to help kind of create an advertisement. Obviously, you have to pay for advertisements on Facebook. Google might be the only solution to an email integration. And then SurveyMonkey actually, it allows you to utilize SurveyMonkey onto your MailChimp. So yeah. Okay, so I have a lot to say about MailChimp. There are obviously so many fun things about MailChimp. It's kind of in a way like Canva, not as user-friendly, I will say, but it does give you a lot of opportunity to be creative with its platform. So I'm gonna be talking a little bit about the plan that I have and how it works for my office. So as you can see on this picture right here, I utilize I pay for the essential package. And with the essential package, I think it's just enough features to really help me do everything that it is that I need to do. So one is the multiple contact lists. With the essential plan, you get 3 contact lists, but they're called audiences. So those are 3, I guess you could say, contact lists that you can create. So like for me, for example, I have a general newsletter that goes out to students, staff, faculty, and parents. I have one for staff and faculty, but sometimes I swap that out for students who maybe have already registered or opened an application for a winter application or spring summer application. And that way they can get more targeted information like, hey, the deadline's coming up. Hey, did you see an extracurricular was added to this program? Something changed for the better. Hopefully not the worst. And then our third is usually for our internal staff. Sometimes our advisors will plan events with other partnering offices and they need a MailChimp. They need something to help advertise and get the word out to a bigger audience. So that way, when I can just come up with a MailChimp and send it and the staff will have it and they can disperse it as they see fit. You get access to all the multiple templates to work off of. You get access to the full library, which is helpful. For me, what's easier is just spending the time to create the template itself, my own version, my own template. But you can be creative either by yourself or you can with the help of MailChimp. Scheduling is so huge. I am so thankful for the scheduling because I'll skip ahead to the analytics just so that I can kind of give you more context on the schedule. But the analytics are super helpful because they help you figure out who's clicking, where in the world are they doing it, how many times are they doing it, how many clicks from individual people are you getting on that. It'll give you the percentage of how many of your subscribers opened it. But it also has this feature, this testing feature built into the package where it will tell you the time and dates that are essential, well, I suppose where people are actually logging in to look at that newsletter. So for us, we determined, well, not we, MailChimp determined that the best time to send a newsletter for our subscribers was Sunday at 3 p.m. Now that is actually now updated. So next term, we'll be doing it at Sunday at 5:45 p.m. So those times have shifted, and it's awesome that MailChimp can take that information and make it easier for me to schedule something and know that we're going to get a lot of engagement. And I have to say that we do get all of the clicks. We have about 10,000 subscribers. I think it's about 15,000 subscribers, and about 50% of those subscribers actually open our newsletter. So that's a lot of engagement, a lot of clicks that we're getting. Obviously, like a ton of them are probably graduated and don't even open their email anymore. So that's super helpful for us in order for the analytics to help us schedule. And then also it's mobile friendly. I think you don't want to get too crazy with how the kind of imagery that you're using. But for the most part, I would say it's pretty mobile friendly. I'm going to just go over the basics for the free version, but I'm going to let Jake talk about his insights a little after that. So for the free version, you get one contact list, and you only get 2,000 subscribers. I should have mentioned that Essentials allows you to have 20,000 subscribers. You get one person who can access the actual MailChimp. You get a limited amount of basic themed email templates. And then following that is just basic reporting. So I think Jake can maybe speak a little bit more to the types of reporting that MailChimp offers. But that's really it's rough, I have to say, because it doesn't really give you a lot of room to be creative, to reach a larger audience. Obviously, if you don't have a newsletter, then the free version is a great way to start, and then you can upgrade when you've maybe maxed out on those 2,000 people. But I'll let Jake talk a little bit about how he utilizes the free version.
Yeah, so I probably don't even utilize the free version to its full capability. I didn't mention this at the beginning when I mentioned my roles, but I also manage a separate newsletter for our, we call it our Education Abroad newsletter, because my office does advising on that. And what I actually do, and unfortunately, I don't have any experience looking at reporting or any analytics or anything. So I use it pretty bare bones. So you create the newsletter, and they give you an option to send an email to yourself. So I do that, and then what I do after that is I remove my email signature and all that stuff, and any like unnecessary forwarding any unnecessary forwarding information. So then I'll forward that email to some listservs that we have, and then just send it out for free that way. So I basically forward a test email to our audience, or to our audiences for free. And it gets the job done for that particular population, but it definitely can't for the international student and scholar population that my office also serves. So I guess the takeaway there is just to maybe test it out, see if it's a good fit for the number of contacts you need or the specific audience you have. And you could save money that way.
I was trying to think about how you could justify adding this to maybe your annual budget. One thing that maybe you can do is really reach out to your local networks to see if they can share out your content. If they kind of have like a paid version, and see if they'd be willing to share out those analytics with you to see like how much traffic you're getting to your link. I thought that out loud, and I was like, no, I can see a director or supervisor really saying, well, then why do we need to pay for it if someone's doing it to us for free? And really, autonomy was really the only thing I could come up with, because being able to have and be in control of your communication is so important, to make sure that all of the messaging is clear, it's consistent with your mission and your goals. But it really is just going to take a lot of testing. But for those of you, maybe you might be scared for paying for a newsletter. That's okay, right? And I just said that, a lot of universities have these networks where you can send out information and people are happy to share. I think Jake and I are constantly using each other's content. We're sharing each other's events. I'm always G-chatting him like, hey, what do you have? What do you got going on? Let me know because I need to advertise it. So really take a look at your own university or organization's social network because it's its own social network in itself. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely second that. All right, so Constant Contact, as I mentioned, this is what my office uses for our international student and scholar newsletters. In my experience, Constant Contact doesn't really offer much more than what MailChimp does. So kind of what we already mentioned in the why use newsletters section or Steven's MailChimp section, there's not a whole lot to add. It gives, I mean, it does offer the things that Steven mentioned. I don't think its analytics are quite as in depth. Like I can't figure out the exact, or they won't recommend an exact time to send out the newsletter based off the amount of engagement it gets and stuff like that. But yeah, there are open and click rates and stuff like that. It is mobile friendly. There are a wealth of templates to choose from, stuff like that. But full disclosure, I actually prefer MailChimp because I think it's a bit more user friendly since I have the opportunity and I have the free version too. So I couldn't even imagine the paid version. But my office ultimately decided to go with Constant Contact because at least at the time it was a cheaper option, and that leads to the next point on pricing. So as you can see, Constant Contact offers a email and email plus option. There is not a free option. We pay for just the email option because it offers more than enough for what we need. If you're curious, I looked into Email Plus and it offers, like, you can embed surveys and polls into your newsletters, which sounds pretty cool. And it also allows for you to do more with your analytics, maybe more things like Steven has experience with in MailChimp. But I guess like maybe for some of us multiple hat people out there, it might not be necessary to, if you go with Constant Contact, it might not be necessary to move up to that email plus option because maybe you don't have the time to get the most out of what it has to offer. So as you can see, pricing depends on the number of contacts you have. We hover just below 10,000 mostly, so that adds up to about $90 a month. So it's not bad. And if you have if you're in a different tier of contacts, you can look at that pricing on Constant Contact's website if you think that would be a better option for your office and your office's budget.
Jake, did you tell me that the amount of subscribers I have is just as much or a little bit under what I pay for MailChimp? Had you told me that?
Yeah, it would be, I think it would be a little bit more expensive now on Constant Contact, but I think it also might be because you only need 3 email lists, because we would need, I think the standard version of Constant Contact because we have so many, or sorry, of MailChimp because we have so many email lists. So we couldn't do the essentials option that you have.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's a little jarring for some people to be like, okay, we just went from $170 to $45. Why is Steven paying $170? And it's like, I mean, obviously for all of these packages, as you continue to grow your following, those prices are going to adjust. I keep getting notifications every day that I'm approaching 20,000 contacts. And, if I don't upgrade, I'm going to get charged like $20 a month for those extra people that are adding on. So, and that's not just for like your audiences, but I mean, let's say you do exceed the amount of emails that you can send through MailChimp. I will say, and I didn't say this before as a highlight, but MailChimp offers a ridiculous amount of emails that you can send within a year, which is 200,000 MailChimps that you can send with that Essentials package. I don't send 200,000, but if that makes you even more excited about getting MailChimp, there you
go. Just since I'm on the slide, I see a question that says, we use MailChimp and it's super user-friendly. How does Constant Contact compare in terms of ease of use? Yeah, very good question. I would say my honest opinion is that it is a bit wonky to use. It's not quite as user friendly. It looks, maybe a little bit more outdated. Like maybe it's like 5 years or so older than MailChimp. I don't dislike it because I'm so used to it now, but it definitely was more of an adjustment period. And I guess something to add about that is before COVID, we had a student assistant who helped me out with communications, and she hated using Constant Contact and was all right with MailChimp. So at least for Gen Z students, it seems like MailChimp is a bit more user friendly as well.
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the nail there about being 5 years behind, because, for a lot of people that get MailChimp or use these cloud-based services, they expect it to be easy, like easy. And I mean, for some of us who maybe grew up in the digital age, it may be easy, but it's not the case for everyone, especially for everyone who doesn't utilize or has multiple hats and is doing a ton of other things. It could be better. I would love to see them just do a complete redo. That would be super great for people to have better access to utilizing it. So.
All right, so let's get to actually putting a newsletter together. So yeah, what's that process look like? And I want to stress too that I have these 5 bullet points, but you don't necessarily have to do them in order. But generally speaking, you'll want to determine the type of content you'd want to advertise to your audience, whether it's like events, announcements, resources, different things like that. I find it really helpful to use a project management website called Trello to organize all of the different types of content. There's a picture here on the right side just to get a sense of what it looks like. And yeah, it's nice for just writing down, the titles, and you can click on each title and put in a blurb or description for each one. And you can share graphics and links and things like that. So it's just helpful for me to stay organized that way before actually putting the content into, in this case, Constant Contact. Next, it's a good idea to decide when the newsletter should be sent out. You can play around with this as well and see what your analytics look like. You can also, and I'll talk about this later, but you can also, even include a survey on your newsletter, and one of the questions, or like a feedback survey, and one of the questions can be to your audience, when is your preferred time to receive this? So you get a sense of when that particular audience is most likely to look at it. And then, yeah, of course, you want to think about appropriate section titles to keep, the newsletter nice and organized. And you'll see in me and Steven's newsletter examples what we decided on. But yeah, they can be something, very general, like announcements, events, things like that. Or they can be, something really specific, like English language resources for international students. So you can determine what you think would be best there as well. And then next, probably the most time-consuming part is either writing your own blurbs or editing blurbs that like event descriptions that have been sent to you by other people. So yeah, it depends on if you're promoting your own or another office's or like community organization's event. But you might need to take the text, copy and paste it, many times condense it, because they can be a lot longer than what you'd want on a newsletter, because they can sometimes be lengthy enough for students. So you want to, get it to a few sentences. And then I always like to edit the blurb so it's speaking to my specific intended audience. A good example of this is, let's say I'm promoting another campus event that's put on by I don't know, our Spectrum Center, so our LGBTQ plus center. And the language that they use might use like English idioms that international students might not understand. So I like to edit that text. So just in case our international students like can actually understand like what a specific idiom means or what, a sentence means, just to increase their chances of reading and clicking and eventually attending the event. And then the last thing that I mentioned here is you'll want to decide which of your contact lists should receive the newsletter. And then once you do that, you're pretty much set to schedule it or send it out depending on, when you want it to go out.
So we knew we weren't going to really have enough time to go through this and show you how to use MailChimp, because I know that's going to be super helpful for you all. So, maybe Jake and I will have to do a 101 of walking you through, just like Katie and Asinda did for Canva. But I'm just going to show you briefly like the CGIS MailChimp. So these are in no particular order, and this is not just one MailChimp. These are kind of just examples of the different things that we send out. So, Jake was talking about blurbs and content. For us, I think for all of us who have so many resources, so much information to get out there, it might not, to Jake's point, it's better to really just have a quick blurb and then a link to whatever it is that you're trying to inform your audience on. So that's just an example of that. The second image right there that says new programs. Well, first I do want to say every summer I do sit down and I do think about a theme for my newsletter so that it doesn't look the same every academic year. It sounds like I'm putting in a lot of effort into this theme, but it's really not. I'm just switching up some colors. Maybe I'm looking at making new PNG files for the categories like you see here, new programs, CGIS events around campus, doing something that MailChimp can't offer. Which, for me, I use InDesign a lot. So I create a lot of files, a lot of graphics on InDesign and Photoshop, and being able to incorporate those files onto MailChimp is always so helpful for me. So for example, that second image is just a MailChimp, as typical MailChimp we would send out to students informing them on a new program. And so that would obviously go to a different category of audience members, like a different contact list. For our newsletter, we usually feature we have events, we do the around campus. I was telling you, I love to share Jake's information. All of my colleagues, I love to share all of their information. We also utilize YouTube. We actually just restarted utilizing YouTube last year, and the MailChimp has helped driving people to our YouTube channel to watch our videos. So there's a lot of other functions that MailChimp offers that you can incorporate into your newsletter. The great thing is that though I would still say it's not as user-friendly, there's so many ways to be creative.
Okay, so here is an example of some screenshots from a constant contact newsletter we sent out to our international students in March. Just for reference, we send out our newsletters weekly during the academic year and usually bi-weekly during the summer. And a link to this newsletter is actually available in the resources section for your reference. But we typically begin our newsletters with any important announcements. And I know I before was saying how not to include important announcements, but I guess more general, like for international students, if it was like a COVID related announcement or an announcement from the university that students might receive elsewhere, we will still add it to our newsletter. So they're receiving this information twice. And then next, we always promote our own events. So under that section, that's International Center Opportunities. And for our specific opportunities, we'll usually have like a button with a registration link, so it stands out a little bit more since they are our events. Occasionally, we'll add a reminder section if we'll be promoting events or lectures or different types of things that we had promoted on a previous newsletter, so we don't always have the same event under International Center Opportunities week after week. So that reminder section is helpful for that. And then we promote our internet or additional opportunities that might interest you. So basically, like Stephen mentioned, we collaborate quite a bit, and I'm always looking through various campus newsletters and community, like the Ann Arbor community newsletters or Facebook pages, to see events that are applicable to our international students. So as you can see here, there's a position open through our housing department that's where international students are eligible for employment, which is great. There are a couple lectures. There's a virtual Ann Arbor Film Festival event happening. So just different types of things that we think could interest our students. And then we also like to have a resource of the week to highlight. Sometimes we'll highlight a specific campus office. In this case, we're highlighting Ramadan 2021 at U of M. So maybe our international students who are less familiar with Ramadan can understand, if it comes up in conversation with like a friend or something, or if they see something, they have a better idea. And other ideas that weren't included in this newsletter will include like any holidays, especially if our office is closed on that day. We'll do like a meet the IC staff, the International Center staff section, so our students can get to know us a little bit better. And then once a month, as I mentioned earlier, we'll include a survey, a feedback survey, so international students can give any feedback they want. And we'll ask about, just general satisfaction, their preferred day of the week, to receive the newsletter, preferred time. And that's actually where we figured out that international students actually prefer Friday evenings to receive the newsletter, which I found very interesting, but we've been doing that for this past year, and it seems to work out pretty well for us.
Nice. All right, so just a couple more slides. We're going to do a few things to consider. So how frequently do you want to send out your newsletter? What day of the week? What time? I know Jake just kind of gave us the breakdown of when he sends out his newsletters. Ours goes out on Sundays at around 3 p.m., but we moved it to a bi-weekly rather than every week, just because we felt like our content was starting to repeat itself, and we didn't want to push the same kind of information onto our audiences. So we do a bi-weekly, but obviously every different university, different organization, you're all going to have a different study culture, a different work culture. When I was in college, I was checked out by like Wednesday night. So anytime after Wednesday was probably not the best time for me to be reviewing my email, but it differs depending on where you're at. Will you send, this is actually a really great question that I'm hoping some of you all might be able to provide some insight. Will you do you send the newsletter under your own personal name or your office's name? I use our office's name. I know Jake utilizes his name, but the email is actually coming from his office name. And the reason why we ask this question is because I think both obviously have a couple of benefits. I think by utilizing your name, does that create a more personable approach to your audience? They know who to contact, or they feel like they're actually getting, like they're speaking with someone that actually adds value to the whole experience. Maybe using your office, kind of prevents the spamming. I think I had asked Jake the other day, like, do you get spammed? But then obviously his solution to that is utilizing the office's email instead of his own personal email. But it is still a question to consider. I'm stuck in the middle. I kind of want to try using my name and maybe potentially using my own contact information. I think, Jake, people know who to contact you, right? Like you were saying, that was like a big plus, that people know who to contact, or at least address if they have anything to add to your newsletters.
Yeah, I think it eliminates a few steps from, a message going to our front desk and then getting transferred to me, or getting if it goes directly to me and I have the capacity to answer it, it does save I guess myself and especially other staff in our office sometimes. So I do like that route.
Great. Third, how do you want to organize your contact lists, one single list or separate lists of students, parents, faculty, and staff? It really depends on your stakeholders, the audience that you're trying to reach. I know we've played around with the thought of doing a newsletter for parents. We've come to the quick conclusion that that's not a priority for us and it could be a priority for you. So definitely start thinking about how you're going to organize those different contact lists. How will you promote your newsletter? The really cool thing about MailChimp is that it allows you to create a landing page so that you can maybe put it on your website, and maybe it's a little button that says subscribe to the CGIS newsletter. So making it visible so that people can see that newsletter, maybe incorporating it on your social media, maybe doing a story on your Instagram that says head to our bio to subscribe to our newsletter. Be thinking of ways that you can promote your newsletter. We're also going to be making sure that we are including it in our signatures so that when we're interacting with people, people know how to subscribe to our newsletter. And then lastly, ask yourself, do you need a newsletter? Do you need this extra component to your job? Obviously, I think that newsletters are so helpful, and for all the reasons that Jake gave at the beginning of this presentation, outreach alone is the best reason to have a newsletter, to be able to engage with students in a direct way, because you already have their contact information. Maybe you've already been slowly building a contact list. All of that stuff is super important, but I don't think it's necessarily going to break you. There are a lot of offices on campus that don't utilize newsletters, although I can't speak for them, and the kind of if they have a lot of positive stories, by not using a newsletter, but newsletters definitely do help significantly.